So she taught A levels, and she kept allegedly getting fired. So that person is on record saying that she was fired within 2 weeks of being hired as a teacher for inappropriate behavior with the students.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ask a Brother podcast. I'm your host, Jeff St. James. And shout out to our subscribers on this channel. We just reached the 25,000 subscriber milestone as of 30 seconds ago. We are at 25,202. And as regards to our members, shout out to you all that's become members to this channel to really support and donate towards being able to build up this channel and platform. One of the main things that we're going to be announcing next week in our members only private video is both our book club as well as members for our channel merchandise, and then how those of you who are members will be able to start placing your orders with the merchandise well in advance prior to the public audience. But I'm going to get all of these announcements out the way. As you all see, I'm not here by myself. I have a special guest. So let me cover this intro because she is definitely an honored guest. And to start with, she is functionally known as the vetting specialist, and she is a life, dating, and relationship coach, a former licensed counselor, marriage therapist with nearly 20 years in trauma recovery and relationships, and now helps high integrity couples and singles find clarity, and they will, as far as healing relational patterns and even securing the foundation for just a lasting marriage. The one, the only, welcome everybody, Dr. Taylor Burrowes.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here, Jeff, sorry.
No problem. I get called that, Jeff, James, and honestly, since I started doing this podcast and stuff, I've been called a whole lot more stuff in the last 2 weeks.
James is a very important name in my family. So it's not just my son's middle name, but it was my father's name, who is no longer with us, and my brother's name, who is no longer with us. So it's a compliment.
Well, you know what? Not only is that a compliment, that lets me know that this is gonna be a good episode, more or less. So, like I said, welcome for sure. So for starters, for all the people that are on my side as far as this channel that may not have never heard of you, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, especially professionally, and how you've kind of transitioned from maybe the mental health side to maybe more of the social media stuff.
Sure, and I'll try not to get too bogged down in all the boring details, but a lot of people are curious as to how someone goes from like a proper mental health career and into the coaching space, because there are some people that do both. But I was a little ahead of the sort of trend of doing the coaching thing. So I lived in the Cayman Islands. I'm from the Cayman Islands. My family's Jamaican, and long story short, I came to America for school and I went back to the Cayman Islands to work after I got my licenses and as I was finishing up my doctorate degree. So I did get my PhD from a university in the United States. And I was able to, before I got my actual degree, I was able to leave and go to Cayman Islands, do work with my licenses, and also finish my research. So the professors gave me a permission because I wanted to do the research in my homeland, to do that from a distance, but the actual program was not a distance program because I finished everything else. So then I was able to—
What was the doctorate in, by the way? I meant to ask you that.
Oh,
what
yeah.
was the doctorate in?
Counseling, marriage, couples, and family counseling. But the actual research that I did in my dissertation was on sexual abuse in the Cayman Islands and understanding the impact of that on a societal level. But I had to focus on the basic, like the focus on counseling related impact. So I talked to a lot of the mental health professionals that were on island, and I was able to kind of formulate like what we really thought was the conceptualization of why it's happening, what's sustaining it, how can we intervene and help eradicate it as much as possible. So it ended up being a little bit sociological in that regard, but I didn't want to talk to the children directly because the ethical constraints are a bit more stringent and it was hard being in a different country. So I wanted to appease my faculty advisors and do the thing that was less complicated. So instead of talking to the survivors themselves, I talked to the counselors like myself in the Cayman Islands. But yeah, so my doctoral dissertation is something that I was very passionate about throughout my career. I worked with survivors the whole time. Before I worked in the Cayman Islands, I worked for a clinic in Miami that was just for survivors of sexual abuse and trauma. So that
Mhm.
was my clinical focus, but also my research focus. And I continued to work with that in the Cayman Islands, even though it's such a small population. It was actually quite, the high incidence there was pretty alarming.
Mhm.
And, that was hard to give up as a passion, but I've found other ways to tap into my passions of justice and, advocacy and things like that. But when I was thinking about where I was in my personal life, I realized that as much as I had all this going for me in my career, I was even the deputy chair of the Mental Health Commission in the Cayman Islands. So it's
Wow.
an entity established by the government in order to write the mental health law and create the policies around mental health for the entire nation, to supervise and oversee how the regulations are done and
Mhm.
everything basically. And so
Mhm.
we trained everybody in mental health, like the police, all the stakeholders. And being the deputy chair was a big honor for me. And
Mhm.
sometimes I ran the meetings because the chair was out. So I had a lot of responsibility when it comes to gatekeeping the profession and
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
making sure public safety was a priority. So that's definitely in my blood. But I stepped down and retired from everything, and I decided to prioritize my own personal life because I was approaching 40 and I wanted to
Mhm.
get married to the right person and I wanted to start a family. So it was very hard to do in a remote jurisdiction like the Cayman Islands, and I wanted to travel, but it was not in place yet, like telehealth, online
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
And it was just impossible to really get approval for any of that because nobody knew how it would function. So instead of going that route and getting caught up in maybe some complications and difficulties, I decided, you know what? I think it's time to let all this go. As hard as I worked for everything, it might
Mhm.
just be better to let it go and just coach. Because I'm
Mhm.
not doing any, obviously therapy is very different from coaching, but when
Mhm.
it comes to just education and training and helping people, like give them advice, basically, which is not what we do when we're doing mental health,
Mhm.
then I don't need a license and I can be
Mhm.
anywhere in the world and focusing on myself, having that freedom and flexibility. So that's what I did. It was hard. I cried a little bit. It was a big decision, but it was the best decision that I ever made in regards to, I guess at that time anyway. I don't know that I
Mhm.
would say I regret getting a PhD and doing what I did beforehand, but I'm definitely very happy now that I am a coach and I'm no longer in healthcare. And
Mhm.
I found my husband and we have our 1-year-old son. So it
Nice,
all worked
nice.
out.
So, quick question: how long were you working in the field before you finally made that decision?
Oh, well, I worked at my actual place of employment for about 10 years. And then before that, I worked at another place for, I think it was 3 years. And so that was, that was when I had my registered internship. So before that, I was in school and doing my practicum and internship in school
Mhm.
in New Orleans and in Miami, because I went to school in New Orleans for my undergrad and my master's. And I obviously, you work under a supervisor. And I was in a hospital, like a mental health facility,
Mhm.
and working with young people, like teenagers, young adults, and who had been put in the hospital for mostly like eating disorders, trauma related
Mhm.
stuff, behavioral issues.
Mhm.
And that was the beginning of my clinical experience. But I didn't get registered to be licensed until I moved to Miami and I started working for that clinic with the sexual trauma survivors. So
Wow.
that was in 2004 or 5. And
Mhm.
then I retired in 2019. So
Oh, wow!
fully
Right before
licensed.
COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was right before COVID, and I sort of positioned myself online already. So I was in good position compared to some people who just kind of scrambled once things kind of went, you know, topsy-turvy. But
Mhm.
still working on it. Business is hard, still
Mhm.
gotta to do a lot to get yourself out there and make sure that people know that you're credible. That is
Yeah.
definitely a big issue.
Yeah, I'm actually noticing that difficulty right now, particularly this year, where as I kind of started to get out there, and it was known like, oh, he's a licensed professional counselor.
Mhm.
He works in the field. This is the city that he's located, and then seeing in realizing like there's times when I'm speaking and focusing on the mental health stuff, but I'm not always a therapist. I'm also just a normal person who has opinions, and seeing
Yes.
like there's a lot of red tape and people are trying to kind of either keep you in a certain box when it comes to conversations, or
Mhm.
they feel like what's happened with you is like you kind of can't be a therapist and be out here kind of doing it. So I'm starting to think about this too, about if there's maybe another avenue of how I can kind of do what I do for a living, but still be able to make ends meet, but also be able to actually fully engage in these type of like podcasting type topical related stuff.
It's not easy. It's a
Yeah.
hard, thing to navigate.
hmm hmm All right. So I always wondered for people who have been in the field 10 plus years or more, what's been just some general observations that you kind of have noted over, let's say, the last 5 to 10 years in terms of just like changes in society, dating, men, women, just from your professional experience or even from life coaching?
Well, yeah, it makes a big difference. So for the past 6 years, I've been coaching. So before that, when I was in practice, one of the main influences on my decision to leave practice was my frustrations with the profession at that time,
hmm
and also my frustrations with just how people would be seeking help,
hmm
because I did general mental health because I was a licensed mental health counselor, and then I did marriage and family work because I was a licensed marriage and family therapist. And in that capacity, it seemed like people just pushed it to the very end. And they would come in as a last resort, like a Hail Mary, and it was
hmm
very volatile, and they were already out the door. And so finding ways to resolve problems in those types of marriages is almost impossible, right? Like
Yep.
it doesn't matter
Yep.
how good of a marriage therapist you are. If the couple
hmm
is just not only incompatible, but they're not willing to do the work, they're already resentful and they're out the door, then
hmm
you can't strong arm them no matter how much talent you have as a therapist.
hmm
They have to be willing. And I realized that I wanted to work on the prevention side of things. So that's why
hmm
with my vetting system, I've really created a way to prevent mismatched marriages. So finding
Okay.
the right partner, the right spouse to marry, I think is the best intervention point to focus on. And obviously you can fix some things because a lot of it is a skill issue. Like relationships are a skill, and a lot of people are not taught that. So if you do
hmm
find a healthy ish relationship, like a couple that is willing to learn the skills and apply them in order
hmm
to resolve the divide that they're experiencing in their relationships, absolutely, you can help those couples save their marriage or save their relationship. But I
hmm
found that they were so few and far between. And so it was a lot of just very high intense sessions that were
hmm
disappointing, and then coupled with a lot of the severe mental health that I was treating at the time when I was a
hmm
therapist, with borderline personality disorders and schizophrenia and trauma victims and perpetrators, and
hmm
all of it. It just I
hmm
One of my first topics that I was going to do my dissertation on was on post traumatic, like secondary post traumatic symptoms.
hmm
So the contagion of trauma. And if you do not take care of yourself, you can absolutely absorb all of those symptoms. You can
Mm,
become depressed. You can become, you can have these PTSD symptoms internalized, and it
mhm.
can bring you down. And so there's a lot of burnout. We talked a lot
Yep.
about burnout in the field,
Yeah.
but it was more than that. I felt like I was having these like fights with evil sometimes, with people
Mhm.
that were just afflicted with evil energy, evil spirits, and it took a lot out of me. And sometimes it made you feel like you were in harm's way. Like I wasn't in
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in a prison. Oh, actually, I did go go to prison sometimes, but my job
Yeah.
itself was not like not me personally, but like as my capacity. In my capacity, I went to the prison to do some inspections and stuff and some consultations. But in my role at the clinic, it wasn't like a high risk population. It
Mhm.
was, you know, people who had means that were coming in like voluntarily to therapy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it wasn't necessarily a difficult population that I was working with, but I
Okay.
found that especially in a small society, you ended up getting everything and anything coming at you through the door, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
It's almost like that that phenomenon that happens where it's like the hard workers get punished with more work.
Yep. Yep.
So like the
Hmm.
more good work you do, the more hard work you gets thrown at you, right?
Yep.
So you
Yep.
end up getting all of these very difficult cases. And if you are a perfectionist, like you said, you
Hmm.
might be a perfectionist, you
Hmm.
don't say no.
You
So
keep
you take
taking
it
on the
on,
job. Yep.
and you do all this work and it's just, you love it. It's hard to let
Hmm.
go. And so it was kind of like a night and day experience when I did let it go and I said no to things and
Mm.
focused on what really mattered to me. But anyway, I digress. But there is definitely a lot of that um, just negative, pessimistic, nihilistic vibe that I was getting from the experience of therapy. I mean, obviously,
Hmm.
there's going to be the good experiences too, but I felt like the negative far outweighed the positive because of the system that I was working in, because the
Okay.
mental health
Okay.
fields were I think they made it really hard for us as practitioners to do
Hmm.
good work because there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of
Yep.
guidelines that I feel were politicized,
Hmm.
and we were not allowed to do what I felt was good work because it was not PC. Because
Mm.
they didn't want you to really be objective or
Yeah.
really focus or steer people towards what is a healthy or a good decision. They really
Hmm.
just wanted you
Hmm.
to enable people and encourage their truth and their
Yep.
reality.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I found that very hard to work with coming from someone with my perspective and my values.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that to me, one of my cliches or one of my sayings, my heuristics that I talked about in my dissertation, which is it's in my TEDx talk if you ever want to watch it. I talk
Hmm.
about the hole in the bucket.
Mm.
And that's how I felt it was functioning. It's like you can do all this work, but if there's a hole in the bucket, it's never going to get anywhere. You're just going to be scrambling like constantly and just disappointed because the bucket's not going to get full.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I did hear everything, and I agree. One of the main things that I've been kind of noting, and it was like this thing that you kind of notice on your own at first, and it takes you a while to really realize something's off because we're trained in it, we're immersed in it, we're just used to certain things. And I got to a place where I was starting, similar to you, of questioning like, so we're supposed to validate everything, every belief, every feeling, every emotion, every thought. Like there's not any that we should primarily challenge or even warn and say this may not be lead to a positive outcome. It's definitely something I've kind of started to notice, particularly in the mental health and to some degree in the educational fields as well, where it
Mhm.
seems like once things are kind of handed down, it's just like a law. It's now a bylaw. It's just the standard. And like any deviation from it can kind of put your license or your ability to work in the field at risk. So yeah, I'm glad that you were kind of it's unfortunate that you left the field because it seems like a lot of the people who are realizing what I'm realizing are having a tough time being able to stay within the field just because of all, like you said, all the red tape that kind of prevents a lot of intellectual curiosity, reevaluating certain things. Like this is definitely something that I'm realizing more and more, and I'm trying to like, how do we walk that fine line? I don't know.
Yeah, I know a few people who are doing it well, and I applaud
Mm.
them because it is a very difficult position to try to work with it while you're in the system.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I think it takes a I don't know, maybe it's different in some jurisdictions in some states, but I found it very difficult in my position.
Hmm.
Hopefully, you will figure it out if you want to do both. But if you
Yeah.
don't want to do both and you do end up transitioning,
Hmm.
I can definitely encourage you there because it's scary in a way, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
having those rules and boundaries in place, it is a bit of a safeguard, right? And like
Hmm. Hmm.
knowing you're just doing it on your own and half of the people that I talk to, or the majority of the people that I talk to who are interested in doing that, they'll like
Hmm.
text me after they make the move and they'll be
Hmm.
like, so what do I do with like my paperwork and stuff? I'm like, whatever you want. All you have to do is really, do a good job and tell the truth and present yourself the right way and pay your taxes. Like there's no rules like that for
Hmm.
coaching. It's just a
Yeah.
business.
Okay. Yeah. So related to that, one of the things that I'm also noticing is that because the field of life coaching, so to speak, is so wide open and it's a lot more unregulated than it is for somebody to refer to themselves as a therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist. Um, what are the issues with a field that's that wide open in regards to the element of maybe a over representation of people who could be kind of in it for the wrong reasons, like grifters?
Yeah, I think there's a big problem there. I mean, coming from my experience, I'm functioning, over functioning as a coach basically because I have so many high standards and I have so many ethical, just like mandates in my own mind that I
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
things very professionally. And I know that that's not what people do as a general coach. And I've gotten a lot of blowback from people for being too hard on
Hmm.
brand new up and coming coaches that pop up here and there.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm a very sort of direct person. I will, you know, I have all the skills to be polite and empathic and validating and all that, but I do not, I'm more like my father. I don't suffer fools.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm going to be very straight with you. And, if the right people take to it, and then some people just don't like it, and that's fine. I know not everybody has to like me. But particularly, I remember this one lady who came up on Twitter at the time, and all of a sudden she's like doing this relationship coaching. And I took her aside and I said, I've just, what was your background in? Did you
Hmm.
study relationships or did you take a coaching course? And she's like, no, no, I was divorced. And my friends talked to me about their problems. And I saw that Twitter people were starting businesses. So I thought it'd be really good. It's something I really enjoy doing is talking about relationships. And I think I'm good at it. People like to talk.
Hmm.
But then I noticed like her personal life was a mess. Like she was single, she was constantly dating a new guy like every couple of months or whatever. And
Hmm.
her advice was kind of, generic stuff, but she wasn't particularly insightful or, she read some books or whatever. And I just suggested to her, I was like, maybe now's not the right time for you to do coaching. Maybe if you get yourself in a stable position, and
Hmm.
maybe if you did some extra studying or a coaching course, like maybe that would help you, leverage you. And she was into health before. She had like some kind of health certification. And I was like, even if you talked about health as a more of a
Hmm.
focus, you could be a health coach. But the fact that you're specifically talking about relationships, to me, I think you're putting yourself under fire because you don't really have anything to back that up,
Hmm.
personally
Hmm.
or professionally, right? Like usually you
Hmm.
have at least one.
At least one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at first she took a back seat a little bit and was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And then she listened and now she's a health coach and she's doing much
Wow.
better. And so
Wow.
sometimes, those kinds of conversations are hard to have, but they're from
Hmm.
a good place. Like I really do think people overshoot and and nobody says anything. They're just like, "Oh yeah, go go go, make the money, make the money." But you have to think about what is right for them. What's what makes sense, what aligns with their skills and their abilities, and maybe sometimes they're playing out their own stuff, like they kind of
Hmm.
want to figure out like how to make a relationship work, but they're not ready to advise other people if you can't even
Yeah.
figure it out yourself. I mean, I get it. It's complicated when we talk about our
Hmm.
professional life and our personal life, but I
Hmm.
do think that someone who has a volatile personal life is not a good advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree. I've definitely had my fair share of relational drama in past relationships and everything. For me, I've learned that I actually don't base nearly as much of my conclusions on who it is I'm willing to listen to on their current dating status, as much as do they have like almost healed and whole perspectives of both sexes.
Mhm.
Because you could be a widow, you could be divorced, and it was very amicable and it made sense for the transition in life. You could be in a marriage and both of you hate each other, so you could have kids and your kids don't think you're a great parent. So I've learned that it's not just as simple as just to have a ring or not have a ring, or have a man or don't have a woman kind of thing, as much as like your prescriptions and the way in which you're describing a lot of these things, or people and situations, I feel like you can almost tell when there is more personal for them than professional. And because they'll start to have like certain patterns when it comes to how they go about which population they're kind of talking to, determines who it is almost like they're pandering to or who they're punishing.
Yes, exactly.
Um, yeah, yeah. So, um, in the last few weeks, Sadia Khan, a very big influencer who's in the mental health life coaching space, so to speak, has definitely marketed herself and branded herself really well throughout the COVID period up until now. But as of the last few weeks, a lot of videos and influencers and content creators have kind of been responding to her kind of more or less being exposed. And I saw your name kind of come up a few times as I was watching a lot of these things and looking and seeing that you had a little bit of a nuanced history with this particular situation. I wanted to kind of prick your brain about like how did you come across Saudi Khan? Your history or background with kind of like what you started to notice, and what is it that you tried to do in terms of finding out more information about what she was presenting and what qualifications she had.
Sure. It was 2 years ago, well, 2+ years ago. I think it was summer of 2023. We had our first interaction that kind of started this whole thing. But I saw her stuff on TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube. I think it was started on TikTok and Instagram, and then she really populated a new YouTube channel. But I thought her stuff was decent, but not as a therapist. I thought her stuff was just decent red pill stuff
Mm-hmm.
because that was very popular in my neighborhood online. And she said she was a psychologist, so I assumed she was a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Good faith, face value.
Mm-hmm.
Usually that's how it goes. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
but you always should have that questioning mind, right? That curious mind. Like if you notice things, then don't take it for granted for too long if you have inconsistencies staring at you. But you wanted to you like to trust people. And I observed her behavior in the comment section. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
notorious tell that everyone is talking about now, that she just goes off. People don't even believe it's her. They're like, "Oh, it's a bot. Oh, it's someone she that works for her or whatever." Come up
Mm-hmm.
with some kind of she was hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is somebody who's posing as her in her comment section, acting very dysregulated, very,
Mm.
the word that I use is ghetto, ratchet, whatever you want to call it, immature,
Yeah, yeah,
reactive,
yeah.
like all the derogatory words. Like that's how she behaves
Mhm,
in the comments section. And it's a stark contrast to how she presents in her videos or generally. I think now you're
yeah,
seeing
yeah.
the mask drop a little bit more in her videos, but she's much more polished and refined in how she presents herself on her videos. And she's not like that in the comment section. And I just made a comment on one of her age gap videos. And I don't remember exactly how the argument escalated, but I was having like my comment started a thread. So there was all these people leaving comments under my comment talking to me,
Mhm,
which I don't know if that upset her because I had such an active thread and I had said that I was a retired mental health professional and I had this experience with sexual trauma survivors and I didn't agree with her
mhm,
assessment that
mhm, mhm,
all young women are damaged if they like an older man. And so I was
mhm,
challenging that
mhm,
assumption and she shut it down. And she's like, I've never seen it. That's not the case. And I just thought this is a very strange way for a therapist to be talking. I
mhm,
mean, I was and am a retired therapist, so I have more leeway in the way that I speak online. But someone who is currently licensed or is a practicing therapist,
mhm.
psychologist, is under different expectations of how
Yeah,
they communicate to their potential clients, to the public, and whatever, and when they're in a working capacity. And it was
mhm,
just, to me, a big red flag that there was something off here. So I asked
mm,
her for her credentials, but not in a demanding way. I just said, "Well, what are your credentials?" And she's like, "You want me to send them to you? You send me yours, I'll send you mine." And I was like, "Oh, okay." She got like super volatile and defensive. And
mhm,
so I looked in my email and she shot off like an email saying, I forget what it says. It was a short email. The first one's like, okay, here's my license. Let me see yours. I bet you don't have any. And I'm going to tell everybody that you're a fraud. Da, 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 da. And so
Mm,
I sent her a copy of my PhD,
mhm.
and she came back with, what's that? See, I knew you were a fraud. Like, that's not in marriage and family counseling. You're a doctor of philosophy. So she didn't know what a PhD was. And
No.
that made me
Wow.
laugh. But then I was like, okay, wow, something is really up. Like,
Mhm.
I don't
It's the thing
believe
that
this
it's the
person.
bare bones thing in mental health is that we effectively know, like for instance, in our field, having your master's is effectively from the mental health space the equivalent of like a high school diploma. Everybody's got to have it. That's
Right.
like that's the baseline.
Right.
So just having a master's doesn't make you super great or bad. It just means like that's just the foundational basis for how almost all of us can work in this space as clinicians, right?
Mhm.
And then we all know like the step up from that is like your license or going on to get your doctorate. And obviously you get to pick whether it's going to be like clinical psychology, if it's going to be marriage and family, if it's going to be the doctorate in counseling education. There's just different tracks and options, and you got PsyDs and PhDs. We kind of know that language in that world. So that early on, you're saying that you started to sense that she didn't know any of this.
Exactly. So
Mm.
I was like, does she even have her master's that she claims? And she didn't send it to me. She sent what she sent to me was her teaching certificate,
Hmm.
um, which doesn't qualify her as a psychologist. And it was
Yeah.
actually not what she claimed. She said, this is my DHA, which is the Dubai Health Authority psychology license. And what she's sending me is not that.
Hmm.
So I asked her, I'm like, what is this? Like, I think she thought I was a fraud. Like, I think she
Hmm.
really thought I was an online fraud like her and that I was completely bluffing. And I don't think, or I think she assumed I wouldn't know what she was showing me. Like, I
Hmm.
didn't know
Hmm.
what to look for. And this is what she does with, allegedly, this is what I think she does with everybody that hires her, is that she just provides these things, claims it's something, and they believe her,
Wow.
right? But
Wow.
that was the catalyst that made my mommy sleuth. I wasn't a mom then, but like I still have that, investigative mind and my passion for gatekeeping the profession and the public. That I was
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
okay, I need to find out more because I didn't even feel comfortable claiming anything if I couldn't verify it first, right? I didn't want to
Right.
say you're a fraud with certainty until I
Hmm.
did my own research. So I did my own digging and looked at her LinkedIn, and she had two different LinkedIn pages back then that say different, very different things than they
Hmm.
do now. And I don't know, I just looked up everything that I could find. I researched her on the internet as deep as I could go without breaking any laws, just in my living room with my computer and no tech. So I just found out that there were a lot of inconsistencies, and she didn't have any licenses. I did contact the DHA. I did contact the British Psychological Society,
Wow.
and nobody had heard of her. And I even tried to track down some of her employers to see if they would say something. And
Hmm.
one person actually responded, and they said that she quickly didn't work there anymore and she was stricken from the website. I was like, oh, well, that doesn't sound good.
Wow.
So it seems like there's a lot of,
Was that place that you were able to make contact with someone, was that a counseling place or was that something else?
I think it was something else. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I have since, and I am allowed to say this because the person said they would go on record. I have
Mhm,
since confirmed with a previous employer of hers in education.
mhm,
So her background is that she graduated with a bachelor's, and then she got her qualified teacher status certificate, and then she started teaching A levels. A levels in like American conversion is like high school, like the
okay,
upper high
okay,
school, like
yeah,
junior and senior year for us. The
mhm,
reason why I know this is because the Cayman Islands is British, and I had to transfer from the British system to the American system, and it put me back. So when you
mm,
transfer from the British system to the American system, you fall back. So people like to say, oh, A levels is college. No, 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 no. A levels is
Hmm.
not college. A levels is
Yeah.
teenagers. A levels is high school, like the upper
Yeah.
years of high school, because people graduate earlier in the British system. They graduate around 16, not 18, like in the United States. So she
Hmm.
taught high school level students according to our US standards, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
university, but it's their college, but it's the equivalent to high school for us.
Hmm.
So she taught A levels, and she kept allegedly getting fired. She had a few,
Wow.
like several positions. I don't remember how many exactly, maybe 3 or 4. But the last
Uh,
one is the person that I spoke to, so I can speak to that. So that person is on record saying that she was fired within 2 weeks of being hired as a teacher for inappropriate behavior with the students.
Oh, okay. And this person's going to go on record with this.
They've gone on record with it, but I haven't really emphasized it out there yet. So I have a lot of
Okay.
a
Okay.
lot of information that I can still expose her with, but
Hmm.
it doesn't look good to be so focused on this. So
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
try to kind of balance it out, but I'm also giving her time to come forward and to take
Hmm.
accountability and to start telling the truth. But she's just doubling down and continuing the facade.
Hmm.
And I find that unfortunate because she's forcing the issue to be more contentious, where the authorities are going to have to go get her at some point,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know?
The Dubai Health Authority.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
no, the police. This is
Oh, wow.
what she's doing is criminal.
Wow.
And so I hear that the laws are very strict there and that they don't look upon this very lightly. And I
Hmm.
absolutely do not wish her harm. All I want is for the woman to not be violating and exploiting people anymore, because she's doing considerable harm to the people she has access to. And that's not just the people she has direct access to,
Hmm.
but the world that she's presenting herself to as a psychologist. So
Hmm.
I have
Hmm.
worked with a couple of her clients, and I've spoken to several of them who have been traumatized by her. So I
Wow.
know for a fact that she is harming people and they're scared of her. That's the thing, is
Hmm.
she lashes out and bullies them and actually scares them into silence. And so
Hmm.
when I'm talking about it, I'm not just talking about it for my purposes. I'm advocating for all these people who don't feel like they have a voice. And they thank
Hmm.
me profusely one on one for pushing this, because nobody else is listening or paying attention.
So people she's worked with in the past, individuals that booked her for services, they're all saying similar themes of unprofessionalism, of lashing out, just blatant just disrespect, and no semblance of credentials to even match or warrants her to be doing what it is she's doing now.
Absolutely. She's presenting herself as a psychologist, as a professional psychologist. She convinces them that she knows what she's doing and she's a trauma expert. And
Hmm.
the scary part is that because she's so unstable, and this is actually playing out as we speak, right? There's a
Hmm.
previous client of hers that started to make some videos. I don't know if you've caught them yet, but he's made some videos of her, of his experience with her, and it's not even like mean, these videos. They're very
Hmm.
balanced. He's very fair. He's talking about the good stuff and he's talking about the bad stuff.
Hmm.
And she's now lashing out at him, like she's commenting on his videos and she's exposing some of the information that he shared while working with her.
Wow,
And she's
that
using
is
it
so
in a
disgusting.
derogatory way, like, you
Hmm.
shouldn't say anything because XYZ, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
like I said, it's not appropriate. But she's in a position where she's getting people's deepest, darkest experiences, secrets. And
Hmm.
then if anything happens that, I don't know, it goes awry, she then can use that against them and bully them with it.
Wow.
So if this
Wow.
is a trauma survivor, imagine how
Hmm.
much more harm it's
Hmm.
going to do, because it's a person of authority, they thought,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that they've opened up to, and she's pouring salt in the wound, to say it, very lightly.
So having a person who can find out your most vulnerable issues and moments, who acts this way, and knowing that now that it's being revealed that she's effectively frauding people and flat out lying about her credentials, outside of taking her to court, they can't go to the public space and say anything because they know. I think I've seen her threatening to sue several people. This is wow. This is so the people that you were talking to that actually met with her. Did any of them ever say? Because I'm hearing a lot of conflicting information about how much she was charging these people. Did they ever say like what she was charging them? Did it sound like really exorbitant or pretty high?
No, I think her prices, I mean, they went up as she got more popular, but that's normal
Hmm.
as a
Hmm.
coach, especially I've raised my prices over the years, that's normal. The difference, I think, is that there was no warning for some people that she just started charging them out. Like she didn't want to work with them anymore. She ended up ghosting some people, which is very
Hmm.
inappropriate, right? If you're
Hmm.
if you're
Hmm.
in the mental health fields, you have to spend a lot of time preparing someone for termination,
Yeah.
right? You don't just literally block them, ghost them, and don't ever respond to them ever again, right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
a huge no-no. But I think that was part of the reason is she wanted to sort of find the deeper pockets and price herself into that upscale high-end coach level,
Hmm.
which is fine if you're doing everything above board and you're not lying, you're not misrepresenting yourself, and you're
Yeah.
informing people appropriately, right? So the
Hmm.
price thing
Hmm.
doesn't bother me as much, like how much she charges. I mean, yes, I think it's a lot, but
Hmm.
if the work is worth it and she's doing it ethically, if
Hmm.
people are willing to pay it, that's just the market.
Mm. Yeah.
But it is
Mhm.
also it's not what a therapist would do. I think that's an important distinction. It's another sign that she's
Pretty so.
not a healthcare practitioner.
Yeah, one of the things, me and you were talking prior to us doing the interview. I was mentioning that I had did a video on how to identify these grifters,
Mhm.
especially female grifters who are focused on the areas of like dating, sex, and relationships. And of the top 10 things, one of them that kind of stood out to me was arguably one of the easiest ways to like spot an influencer or grifter who's kind of in it for the wrong reasons is although they're uh, supposed to be marketing or saying that hey it's the lifestyle coaching, it's the therapy, it's the mental health, this it's whatever it is that's supposed to be the product, and in reality they're almost using like their overt pretty privilege and selling their sexuality to market it. It's not to say that there's not anybody who's beautiful or handsome who can do the work.
Right.
It's just that's not like from a professional standpoint, that's not really there. Like imagine a really highly credentialed psychiatrist who, whenever he goes up to do a conference, he's wearing like a tank top. And I would be like, I was like, what? And he, flexing the muscles and doing, like, they're like kind of weird. Like he doesn't have to do that because the work will speak for itself. And I didn't realize that too much later on that she and many other ladies who can kind of skip through a lot of the scrutiny. Like I'm 2 months into some of these people in the internet starting to know who I am, and people are automatically looking at my credentials, looking for my license, trying to see where I graduated from. They're posting this all in comment sections, and I'm like, this is 2 months into them knowing me, and she could have done this for years if it wasn't for the most recent scandal. And she was like skated, like most people just had no idea and would even assume, oh, she calls herself a psychologist, so she's a psychologist. Like just there's just no like follow through, but like actual professionals, if you say something in the public space questioning a particular view or political thing that's impacting the field, people are like, "Oh, he's a kook or he doesn't know anything." And I'm like, why is it that we have almost like substantially higher standards for everybody who's actually doing the work? And if they're like grifting and if they're really pretty or really handsome, they can kind of skirt through all of this stuff. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think one of the first people that I told about this, because he's from the area, he's, in Dubai, he
Hmm.
said, beautiful women get away with murder,
Mm.
and I think that is unfortunately true. It's been true for a very long time. And
Hmm.
it's unfortunate. And I hope to change that because I think it's helped to create these women who are just irresponsible. They don't take accountability. They're entitled. And I'm not
Hmm.
just talking about
Hmm.
grifters online, but women in general. If we're talking about
Hmm.
trends in mental health, there's a
Hmm.
lot of this coddling that happens with women that sort of I don't want to get political, but a lot of the progressivism that has
Hmm.
happened in our society has
Hmm.
impacted women in that way, that
Yeah.
it's created this sort of free pass to do anything and get away with it, not have to
Mhm.
face the consequences. And I put out a video the other day about cluster B personality traits and how to look out for them. And a lot of people assume that you have to have experienced trauma in order to become this cluster B personality. First of all, it usually starts very young in age. That's why it's a
Mhm.
personality disorder. It's not something that just happens all of a sudden in your 20s. But a lot of times it's not trauma. A lot of times it's the opposite. It's like a permissive parent who spoiled you and
Mhm.
who didn't
Mhm.
put in boundaries. So they neglected you in a way. They didn't show you how, behavior is attached to consequences. And so then
Wow.
you then develop these more narcissistic traits where you're
Mhm.
antisocial and you disregard the law. And this is kind of the result of what we're seeing, is that women abuse that pretty privilege, and generally, they get away with this stuff.
What are your thoughts about Sadia Khan and her views of like the law and the legal system? Is it something that you think that she kind of sort of tries to skirt around, or does she flat out like just disregard it and isn't like scared of it at all?
I mean, she said it. I don't think it was a joke. I don't think it was satire. She, in a video,
Mhm.
said, if she was in another life, she would be a drug dealer. And then she
Ah, the
described,
drug dealer comment. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
she
true. I forgot
described
about that.
her own characteristics of not having any work ethic, being very lazy, not having any respect for the law, and just wanting to get away with things. And so she said, I'd probably be like maybe a drug addict and a drug dealer. I think that's what she said. Anyway, it was a
Wow.
tell. That's her dropping her
Mhm.
mask and
Mhm.
describing herself more authentically. But it, my I can't assess anybody because I'm not a mental health professional, but in my academic experience and training, right, a lot of her behavior points to many of these pathologies. And
Mhm.
in my experience when I was a mental health professional, I saw, like I told you before, I saw a lot of severe mental illness in the work that I did,
Mhm.
which many of us do. And
Mhm.
she is one of the worst presentations that I've ever seen. The
Yeah.
fact that she disregards the law the way that she does, the fact that she
Mhm.
lies through her teeth the way that she does, and she just shapeshifts. She just puts on an act and gaslights people to buying into it and gets away with
Mhm.
it with her pretty privilege. So to me, that indicates some of the more serious pathologies are present. And I just compare it to some of the maybe the famous con artists out there, like Anna Delvey. She reminds me
Mhm.
of Anna Delvey if you've watched that
Wow, wow,
Netflix
wow, wow.
show.
Yeah,
Like
it's great. It's great.
how deep it goes. It's you want
Mhm.
to help them. You want to be the therapist that fixes her, that helps
Mhm.
this person resolve whatever's going on. But some people are just not capable or willing.
Mhm.
They're not receptive, or they're possessed by demons or evil or whatever the case may
Yeah,
be. It's
yeah.
just not possible to change them because they're not willing. And to me, she is dug in to this. And I obviously, I'm a person who carries a lot of empathy, and I see the reasons why people can potentially become the way that they are, but that gets used against you when you're dealing with someone who is a dark personality.
Would you say that she displays the dark triad traits, like the narcissism, psychopathy, and what's the other one, Machiavellianism? Like, do
Mhm.
you
Oh,
like
yes.
see that pretty clear? Which one kind of
Absolutely.
stands out the most out of those three?
It's hard. It's a toss up, but I find the narcissism is the primary factor, like just
Hmm.
malignant narcissism from her.
Hmm.
But
Just almost like an inability to see things from other people's perspectives, right? It can only be through the lens of what's a benefit to her and all of that.
well, the grandiosity as well, right?
Hmm.
Like she
Hmm.
has a lot of grandiosity, but she needs the admiration. She exploits people and she rationalizes it. So it's not like she exploits people and then feels bad, or she just keeps doing it.
Hmm.
She
Hmm.
compounds the exploitation, and like I said, she shapeshifts. So she's kind of, people have called her chameleon, but I don't know what the clinical term for this is. Maybe you can tell me because I've been out of the field for a while, but
Hmm.
she will put on a persona
Hmm.
and believe her own lies. I don't think she's that unconscious about it. I think she
Yeah.
knows what she's doing, but she fully buys into it to become the
Mm-hmm.
part that she's
Mm-hmm.
playing. So the reason why I say that is because right now everybody knows that she's Pakistani and that she's from London, but now she's telling everyone she's Arab, and she's changing her dress and she's changing her lifestyle, and now she's promoting polygamy. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
she's becoming
Mm-hmm.
an Arab, which
Yeah.
this is not a political thing. I'm just showing you that you can't just like
Mm-hmm.
change these things about yourself and convince people that that's the way it's always been. And that was one of the reasons why I brought up the plastic surgery about her. Not because I care if she had plastic
Mm-hmm.
surgery, not because I'm insulting her for how she looked. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just, this is another part of the constellation of the behaviors, the patterns that you see in people like her, is that she completely changed her appearance and
Yeah.
she pretends like it never happened. It's just
What
a
what
weird
specifically
incongruence.
would you say that she did change? I did see clips of them talking about her using like body shifting, editing
Yeah.
type thing, but like, was there other cosmetic things that she was more specifically doing?
Yes. I had, it's not like I paid people to do this. It's people that I know that I'm connected to and that are willing to offer their consultation. So I had someone who is a aesthetic dentist comment on her aesthetic procedures in her before and after picture. So there's like a long list. The description is in some of my videos, but it's nose, cheek, brows, here, like her whole facial structure has changed, and you can see
Uh,
it in the before and after. But she was
mhm,
a beautiful woman to begin with.
mhm, mhm,
So whatever dysmorphia she might have or preferences she might have, that's, you know, whatever reason she wanted to change it. But she also, I guess, uses a lot of help assistance in other
mm,
treatments for changing the way that she looks, because maybe she's
mhm.
very insecure or whatever the case may be. But again, it's not so much that, you know, we she had it done. It's That's not the big deal. The problem is this facade and the deceit around it and pretending like it never happened.
But it never
and
happened. Wow.
and then she will mock and insult and bully other people for their
Hmm.
looks very
Yeah.
harshly if
Yeah.
you see the comments that she leaves. So it should indicate to anyone who is paying attention that there is some significant inconsistencies and incongruencies here. Like this points
Hmm.
to an unstable psychology.
Hmm. Hmm. And I know that a lot of her themes she would actually touch on was a man being insecure in this scenario, that scenario, a woman being insecure. And it's like, how are you talking so much about what makes somebody secure or insecure when this is such a major thing that you're kind of effectively lying about? And like you
Mhm,
said, once she's challenged, she's always going for the image, always going for the visuals. You're too
mhm,
short, you're fat, you're ugly, no one wants you. It's like, wow, wow. One of the other of the 10 that I had, there was another one that I wanted to run by you of kind of how to recognize individuals like this. It was fortune cookie astrology pop psychology,
mhm,
where their understanding of like human behavior is just so limited. You can almost tell it's not clinical. They will almost struggle with long form discussions, especially like in the presence of qualified professionals in the various domains that they're actually talking about.
yeah.
Where it's like, what I think that I've noticed a trend with them is those that are getting away with the pretty privilege, the handsome privilege, they're just so charismatic, but they don't have the actual credentials to back up why they're in that spot.
Mhm,
You'll almost never see them on stage with someone who does have those credentials.
right.
It'll always be one on one. It'll always be, a power position where they're just seen as the authority. They don't have anyone to kind of push back or say like that doesn't mean that word at all. Like, I don't know where you what you're using that from, or like, do you even know how to screen for that? What assessment tool would you know versus just claiming this? Like, have you worked with this population before? Only the qualified professionals would know what they're hearing,
Mhm,
if it makes sense or not, if it's real, and if they could back it up with evidence-based data or models of any kind. And I noticed with her, it was like, wow, she's almost always doing one-on-ones. And even when she's on stages, it's just a host. It's never a person who can actually, let alone a public intellectual. like
Mhm.
especially in the field that she's making all this money out of. It's like, wow, I've never really seen her hanging out with an actual psychologist. And
Well, recently
yeah,
she did, and I haven't
hmm
watched it yet, so I do need to watch it. The one with Orion
Teraban.
Taraban. Did you
hmm
see it?
Not yet. And for me, as me now getting into the space and starting to hang out with people, I'm now realizing that once you get to a certain point in terms of fame, notoriety, and kind of working her way up or how they get their way up there, once you get to a certain point, it no longer matters because
Yeah,
it was like it no longer
exactly.
matters because your name, your image, the views are going to come. So now people will now come to you or hang out with you. Whereas like the build up time of when someone would have normally challenged you is typically when you know you're just getting started in this space. People are questioning everything, but when you've kind of skated through all of that, and now you have millions of followers, and now people are you're offering or allowing people to be partnered with you. Nobody wants to damage those relationships anymore
Right.
because you're such a weighty big figure. And it's like I'll take him. He for all of you that don't know, with Dr. Taraban, he runs the channel Psych Hacks, and I personally have him probably top two of psychologists. He has his personal opinion on society and how things are moving between men and women and the most ideal types of relationships. But what he's using to back it up, there is a science to it. There is a method to his viewpoint. And, he may effectively be the first true person that she's going to be around or has been around. But I 100% know they're not going to go deep. They can't. Not the two of them. Just because I not his background and I know how the different levels of how far he can go into the weeds of this stuff. His credentials, his experience and everything. At best they can share a video together. At best they can kind of be around each other, but it'll always be surface level. And it'll be pop culture, pop psychology terms that everybody is overusing now. That's going to be her bread and butter. So yeah, so it's unfortunate because it's like I kind of view people like her as like they're like the horoscope people of the mental health field, where they just try to make things fit
Yeah.
certain categories versus actually really, really breaking it down, really doing a proper assessment and being able to say, you know what, I think we need to rule this out, rule this in. It's just usually no context to what it is, the prescriptions that they're making. So yeah, so I really, really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening. I know you have a young child and a husband. For starters, before we segue to anything, did you have any particular additional points that you wanted to make about this topic?
No, I think we've done a good job of digging into it, but yeah, I think hopefully people have taken away that my intention is good faith in trying to hold somebody accountable
hmm
for injustice that I really do feel is putting us all in danger, because I think it could have a lot of implications for people who are trying to do the right thing and work online. And
hmm
also I think platforms need to be more responsible for who they let on their podcasts, and
hmm
yeah, I just think that there's a lot more involved. This is a very nuanced topic that we should all be interested in, and it's not just about a cat fight or drama online. Sometimes people do that for engagement, but you have to be able to discern when something has a bigger significance. Kind of like Candace Owens is getting a lot of flack right now, and I think her intentions are real. And I know a lot of people
hmm
dislike her a lot, and they will judge me because I'm endorsing her or whatever. But I do think that there is a difference between the fanfare of what you see online just sort of being rehearsed or being, what
hmm
is the word? Like people just planning things to get viral. Sometimes
hmm
people will orchestrate a whole thing, some kind of drama just to get clicks and engagement. And when
hmm
something is more genuine and organically happening and learning the difference. And I think all of us are just sick of seeing so much negativity online that sometimes we might see negativity and we're burnt out. We're burnt out with it. We're overloaded. We're overwhelmed. But
hmm
yeah, you get to choose what you pay attention to, and you want to choose like things that are healthy, things that are stable, but sometimes, you might see things that are exposing negative things that are in good faith.
Yeah, and me between the influencers, even Charlie Kirk, realizing the level of pushback when you're genuinely trying to come from a place of objectivity,
Yeah.
and people, it's like if their ability to accept or receive something is almost always exclusively based on if they like the person or they like how it sounds. It
Yeah.
has almost no bearing on whether or not it's actually true or not, or what you're bringing up is accurate. It's always about do they simply like you, and is the person you're referencing or the idea you're talking about something that they already love, like, and believe. The confirmation bias is like,
Yes.
wow, wow.
Yes. And lately I'm getting a lot of pushback from people that I've spoken up about Charlie Kirk.
Hmm.
And I spoke up about therapists that are online giving people like excuses to not have empathy for these
Hmm.
situations, right? And so I
Hmm.
made a video where I'm just very emotional and I'm giving my point of view. And there are people who are responding to that negatively and trying to, push their own opinion. And I said, here's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say you need to separate the person's behavior from the person. And that's all that Charlie Kirk was trying to do, was to say, this is wrong, but it doesn't mean that he wants you to die.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
And I'm laughing because to me it's so basic. This is such a basic thing to understand, that you can judge the behavior and not condemn the person. That
Hmm.
those are two very different things. And the fact
Yeah.
that people are hearing that objective truth and they're internalizing it as violence, feeling like
Hmm.
that person wants you to not exist and wants you to
Hmm.
die, or is trying to take your identity away from you, those are two
Hmm.
different things. And we need to fix that somehow. Like, if
Hmm.
everyone, all of us mental health people, if we can strive to be more objective and address this issue. I just think
Hmm.
that hearing therapists normalize not having empathy for someone, in anyone, not just Charlie Kirk, anyone in a violent
Hmm.
situation, that's very dangerous, because it is the cluster B personalities that don't have empathy for
Hmm.
people in those situations. And if we're propagating that in clients, if therapists are propagating that in their clients, and if
Hmm.
I were to be saying that as a coach to my clients, then, and educators are doing that with their students, then that's why we're seeing this influx in mental
Hmm.
illness, because we're normalizing all these maladaptive things
Hmm.
in people.
Hmm.
And obviously it's exacerbated by online drama. So
Hmm.
to me, it's there is a definitely a turning point right now, where now is an opportunity to harness that clarity and
Hmm.
hopefully change things for the better.
And I caught that turning point reference. You killed it, Barry. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the moment you turn the microphone on and turn the camera on, it almost doesn't matter what you say. There's people that's going to land on both sides of it. As someone like myself who was willing to look a little bit more deeply into his methodology in terms of how he did about argumentation, which populations he tended to focus on, right? Which ones he tended not to focus on, and why that was like almost an intentional thing. And for me, I even as a both personally and professionally, I've always known that there's always going to be plenty of instances where there's people all around the world or all around us that could pass. Things could happen, and we could almost feel nothing, either because of being desensitized, a lack of community, of actually knowing them. There's all host of reasons for why we may not actually feel anything. Like when the Queen Elizabeth passed, it wasn't like I was shedding tears, or it was like a moment for a holiday for me, or it's like, oh, I need to take the whole day off. This is hitting me. It was like, oh, another world leader passed.
Right.
And some people would have looked at her legacy and the things that her empire that she was over contributed in, and some people had more positive leanings, and some people had more negative leanings. I think the human element, the human expression of grief and sorrow and feeling something or feeling nothing, we're almost always on that spectrum, depending on how much we knew someone, how close we were, whether we agreed with them or not. That's like normal stuff. What I kind of paid more attention to was people cheering.
Mhm. Yeah.
people being happy.
Well,
Um,
to me, it was veiled. It was a veiled,
mhm,
almost, I don't know if it's not the threat, but it's a veiled dig at the
mhm,
situation because I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. Like, there's a prominent therapist online in general, like, or not in
mhm,
general, but specifically who talked about this. And he was very
mhm,
smug when he was saying it. And he tried to
mhm,
say, like, not having empathy is not the same as not celebrating. And you have a right to not empathize with someone who does this and does that. And like, isn't
mhm,
that the
mhm,
same thing if you're feeling smug about
mhm.
not caring about their death? Like, that's different.
Yeah, yeah. Like for me, it's real. We can say those things, but we don't know the motives of each person and why they actually legitimately don't feel
Right.
something,
Well,
right?
there's also a
So for me,
semantics
like, yeah,
issue because
it definitely
what
is.
is grief? What is sympathy? What is
Hmm.
empathy? What is compassion? Like, all these
Hmm.
words are misconstrued and used
Hmm.
interchangeably, but I
Yep.
think the message is what's important. And
Hmm.
it's when you feel happy, you might not be celebrating, right? Celebrating
Hmm.
is more of an observable behavior. But when you're
Hmm.
kind of gloating that
Hmm.
someone had a tragic death,
Yeah.
I think that is pathological. I think that comes
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
the dark side of the human condition, right? I call it
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
shadow. So to me, that is very different. And if we're encouraging people to be happy and gloat
Hmm.
internally, not that it's observable, I
Hmm.
think that we're doing a disservice to people's health.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the ways I've always known of how you can tell the difference between the two people who apparently don't feel anything significant is towards the individual, because maybe they did have legitimate issues or gripes or concerns about this individual and how they were moving. You'll always see how that extends to the other people that were involved, family, children,
Yes,
and
exactly.
the lack of ability to have any sympathy or empathy there is a revealing, to me, a much more revealing component of what you're kind of talking about in terms of those type of traits. That's kind of, it's very dark. It's almost like guttural base view of like humanity, and it's like he deserves it, and so does his kids, kind of thing. Like, it's insane. And again, I remember seeing this type of stuff like when the election would happen. They would talk about what they would want to have happen to their abuelas or the children of undocumented immigrants, or the anger and frustration with, let's say, the Arab population that may not have voted in unison completely with one particular political candidate. And they were saying, we hope that they finish the job in Gaza. Like, it's a thing where people will just completely dehumanize. The two extremes I've seen is like we'll either completely dehumanize people or will lionize them and make it seem like nothing they've ever said or if they ever done was problematic. And usually the truth is, as you know, like somewhere more so in the middle. And if their life and the lifestyle was a little bit more in the middle, it makes sense to me that there's going to be people that's definitely, missing them, crying, truly feeling distraught, and other people that may be more apathetic or don't feel much of at all. And unfortunately, some people that's going to flat out hate them. Um, but yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you did an episode like that where you tried to touch in on trying to remind us about our humanity. I came at it through the lens of Jim Crow and bodies, black males usually hanging, and it would be in the pictures that we would see, you would see these, it'd be a whole community event. Mothers, fathers, children, everybody's just standing outside watching. And you would see in some of these pictures people smiling, laughing, cheering, right? And I was warning people that that image that we see of people who have effectively lost their humanity in those moments, they're literally in the presence of a dead body, and they feel ecstatic. They're happy. They're almost cheering. In fact, many of them were cheering. And some of you all are like cheering about this guy in the way in which he got gunned down, and
Exactly.
like talking about how ecstatic you are and how like I remember hearing it when they said something along the lines of like, if only the person had went a couple more inches to the right with Trump, we wouldn't be dealing
Right.
with this stuff now. Like, this is
Exactly.
like and again, I don't, not turning this too political, but it's like hearing some of the stuff that I've heard on the left, as a person who's grown up primarily on the left my whole life. It's been jarring and it's been jarring for when I'm trying to bring attention to it, of seeing them come up with the mental gymnastics for why they should be allowed to hate somebody and they should be allowed to cheer and they should be allowed. And I'm like, come on, y'all. Like if you remember Jim Crow and what we saw during those images, y'all don't see the semblance of anything close to. I'm like, the reality is this guy still, you can disagree with some of his stances, disagree with some of his statistics that he may have used and which ones he maybe embellished on a little bit. That's different than I'm happy he's gone. I'm happy he's gone.
Yeah, and I think we need to
Yeah.
play this out on like a local level, like in our actual lives, not online ultimately. Like
Mhm.
that's not where it really matters. What matters is in our real life. And just as a personal anecdote, like if I hear someone close to me, even if they're talking about someone we don't like or that we're in in a conflict with,
Mhm.
and they say something a little base, I will sort of turn to them and be like, well, that's not nice. Like, let's, be
Mhm.
more considerate than that. Like, be a bigger person. Like, I think we need to just remember that. Like, these are just
Mhm.
basic morals that we should apply in our daily lives, not
Yeah.
just to the people we care about or with the people we care about, but in regards to people we don't care about. We shouldn't wish
Mhm.
people harm, right? Just because we had a conflict or we had a disagreement or we don't like
Yeah.
them. And that magnifies to these more macro levels out there in the world, and people just they've dehumanized each other, and they are normalizing feeling
Mhm.
that way and projecting all of that anger and hatred onto
Mhm.
the other side, whatever that
Yeah.
other side is.
Yeah. And it seems like each side is taking their turn in terms of, like you said, the dehumanization. And each side almost develops this blind spot of their own side doing certain things. So, like when George Floyd passed, immediately after everyone was talking, a whole lot of people that's supporting Charlie Kirk right now was talking about his drug habit, how he was a criminal, how, all this stuff about his life and the life that he lived, all of which may have been true, but the timing of it, the callousness of it, the George Floyd challenge, where people who ended up being on the far right, they would take these pictures where they'd have somebody laying on the ground with somebody with their neck, their knee above their neck or the base of their neck.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I saw the pictures. I saw them recircling again, like recently, and I'm like, yeah, I remember this. But now that they're on the other end of it, they can easily point it out when they see it on the left, and vice versa with the left pointing it out on the right. But that level of integrity of acknowledging, like you said, we kind of have to control this
Police
within our
ourselves.
own police ourselves within our own relationships because it's like it's ugly. I'm like, um, when the Pelosi got attacked, I was hearing jokes about that. Trump gets attacked once and almost twice, and people are saying they should have finished the job. Like, I don't know what is going on with this country, but I'm grateful that there's people like you that's in front of a microphone that's trying to remind us about like our humanity.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you're here too. And it's only 2 months in, you said? It's just beginning for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Yeah, I went viral July 3rd and I had like 130 subscribers at that point, just plugging along, just slowly doing my build up. And then one or two things where I kind of talked about feminism, masculinity, men's issues that have been ignored in society. And the subscriber count kind of jumped. So I had to play catch up in the last 2 months with like getting my computer stuff and getting sound equipment. And I'm trying to keep up with the demand and people, when you gonna put something out? And, this been 3 days. Like, so,
That's
and
wonderful.
also
Congratulations.
thank you. And walking that fine line between recognizing that, yes, I have a background as a professional therapist, but also recognizing that my channel is still like an open channel that's still forming as it speaks, where it's like it's just ask a brother, like just ask questions, just and being allowed to ask questions. That's really what I'm pushing for, and being allowed to respectfully do that. And whether it's about George Floyd, Jeff, you, Sadia Khan, Charlie, the ability to be able to ask questions is a connection to me of free speech and our ability to be allowed to think. And if we're not allowed to think, if we're not allowed to speak, and if we can only speak and think things that won't offend others, we don't have free speech or free thought. So that's kind of my lane of where I'm trying to artfully walk down, but I'm trying, I'm figuring it out.
Well, I'm sure you will be doing great things for this community online and in real life. So I look forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, not going to hold you any longer. Thank you for coming on today. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and all the different sites and in particular services that you have to offer?
Sure. Well, I'm on YouTube. I'm now fully monetized. So also trying to step up my game on YouTube. So I'm at Dr. Taylor Burrowes on YouTube and Taylor Burrowes on Instagram, Dr. Taylor Burrowes on TikTok and Twitter. And if you wanted to reach out, they can reach out to me for coaching. I mostly work with singles who are looking for their ideal match for marriage.
Okay.
It's not that I don't work with couples, and I do work with individuals who aren't necessarily looking to get married anytime soon, but just looking for self growth and development. But I specialize in teaching the vetting system to singles who are looking for their ideal match. So I know a lot of people are frustrated and feel like it's so hard to find that person. So it
Hmm.
is my
Hmm.
specialty, and I have matched many couples together. So it's
Wow.
something that I love to do.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you for your time. And all of you, make sure if you're watching this right now, after you like the video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't, make sure you go to Dr. Burrowes' channel as well. Feel free to follow her, shout her out, and let her know that you came to her channel from watching this episode. And make sure that you support her going forward. So thank you for your time, and thank you all for watching. And peace out.